welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up, we're talking the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Peanut Butter Senior Bowl, and the standouts that the Texans could be targeting in the 2025 NFL Draft. We'll break down some of the top guys from the Senior Bowl practices so far. Obviously, they have not played the Senior Bowl yet, but just looking at practices, just looking from what people had to say around some of these prospects, I'll break them down and let you know who the Texans could be taking an extra look at. But before we get into anything, we're talking the draft. And it's mock draft season, so rock out with your mock out. Send me your mock drafts over on Instagram today. I want to do a Texans fan mock draft roundup. So I want to take all of your mock drafts that you've done, and I want to display them on the show for everybody. I'm going to take the best ones that are sent to me. So if you want a chance to get on the show, DM me at Texans Today, Chat Sports on Instagram, your mock draft. I'll put that link down in the comment section for my Instagram. If you want a chance to get on the show, a little flex your football knowledge maybe, go down and send me your mock draft on Instagram. Now, let's look at some of these standouts from the Senior Bowl. Let's start with what a lot of Texans fans might be looking at first in the draft, and that's offensive line. We have Jackson Slater from Sacramento State, Sac State, which for a lineman, obviously, I don't think that's a great name. Sac State. Regardless, he stand out for Senior Bowl offensive lineman Jonah Savaiinaea, Zabel, and Anthony Belton are all guys who really showed out. And the one guy that I really took a liking to, and his clips just really stood out to me, was Jonah Savaiinaea, which, hope I'm saying that right. The offensive lineman for Arizona played a lot of tackle, but at the Senior Bowl was working a ton at guard, and he looked fantastic. I think that's exactly what the Texans need, is a mauler at guard, a big boy who can also pass block, and I think that's exactly what you get with Jonah. 6'5", 330 pounds, a PFF grade of 75.1. He looked great for the Texans, and I think he could be a option there at pick 25 for the Texans if he's there. If he's the top on your board, the top offensive lineman, I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. Another guy that's been getting a lot of buzz, and maybe a diamond in the rough. I don't know if you're allowed to say NDSU's a small school anymore. Producer Justin's kind of laughing at me. I mean, they've had so many draft picks come out and so much, draft prospects that have come through the program. I don't know if you can call it a, diamond in the rough, a small school, but Zabel's getting a lot of late round 1, round 2, round 3 buzz from his performance at the Senior Bowl. So another guy that you have to consider when looking at guys in the draft for the Houston Texans. I want to know from you, what are the odds the Texans go O-line in round 1? Because I think we all agree maybe the biggest need that the Texans have this offseason is those big boys up front, the offensive line. Scale it from 0 to 100, zero chance the Texans are going O-line. 100, you might as well give in the card right now because that's what they're going. Let me know down in the comment section. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get hit with the YouTube ad break, perfect timing. Scroll on down and give me your answer. I would put it at about a 60% right now that the Texans go offensive line in round 1 of the draft. It's a huge need, but at the end of the day, when you're picking at pick 25, I don't know how many offensive linemen are going to be off the board at that point. And if their favorite guys are already gone, if there's nobody available that the Texans have a round 1 or maybe even an early round 2 grade on, I could see them going best player available and going with another position there at pick 25. Maybe wide receiver. I don't know. Here are some of the standouts for the Senior Bowl at wide receiver. Jayden Higgins, Iowa State. Reminds me a little bit of another Iowa State wideout in one Xavier Hutchinson. Jaylin Noel. We also have Jack Bech, Tez Johnson, and Ty Belton. I want to look at one player in particular, and his name is Tez Johnson, the wideout from Oregon. And people are going to probably jump to conclusions with this. And I'm not saying that I'm done with Tank Dell and that he's never going to play for the Houston Texans again. But he won't be ready for the start of the next season. And if you're looking for a Tank Dell replacement, and I'm not saying he's going to come in and Tank Dell is going to lose his job. I'm saying somebody to fit that role at the beginning of the season. I think Tez Johnson fits that role beautifully as a slot, gadget, shifty wide receiver, smaller in stature, 5'10", 160 pounds, but he's got that inline speed and something that you want to take the top off the defense. I think Tez Johnson could be an intriguing option. And same with the guy from TCU, Jack Bech. 62 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns for the Horned Frogs this past season. I love this guy. And round 2, round 3, if he's sitting there, I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. A bigger frame body, 6'2", 220 pounds, which you already kind of have somebody of that mold in a Nico Collins. But I wouldn't mind it whatsoever. Another big target, another, big guy for C.J. Stroud to sling the ball to. Yeah, and worst case scenario, maybe he's your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. He's also an excellent run blocker. So if you're looking for an all-around guy, I think Jack could be that person. And lastly, from the receiving group, I wanted to put these kind of together because, tight end, receiver, very much mixes in today's NFL. I want to look at some of the standouts at tight end, though. And one guy in particular who I think looked fantastic, Elijah Arroyo, which, funny enough, I covered high school football in the Dallas area for the past about 5 seasons. I covered him at Frisco Lone Star, was incredible there, and continued that at the University of Miami. And he was maybe one of the biggest standouts from the Senior Bowl this week. Looked fantastic. Route running's there. Big body, again, 6'4", 245 pounds. The Texans are somewhat set at tight end, you would think, right? They have Dalton Schultz, Cade Stover, Brevin Jordan is coming back next year. But they have been talking to a lot of these tight ends at the Senior Bowl. So I don't know if they have something cooking, if there's a move to be made there. Maybe they do go tight end somewhat early, but with 3 guys on the roster, I don't see the need to go there early for a guy like Elijah Arroyo. Another guy who, when you look at his stats this past season, I know it's Bowling Green, but Harold Fannin Jr., 117 receptions, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns on the year. Wow. This dude is an absolute baller. He's been showing out as well at the Senior Bowl. The Texans are looking to go tight end. This could be an option, but like I said, unless they make some sort of other move, I don't really understand all the tight end hype, especially for the early round picks for the Houston Texans. Now, coming up, more Senior Bowl standouts so far. We're going to look at the running back, look at some guys on the defensive side of the football coming up in just a moment, but couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors over at Game Time. Last minute tickets, those lowest prices guaranteed. Make sure you never miss a moment of playoff ball with Game Time. Lowest prices guaranteed. Once again, the prices drop as the event gets closer, and Game Time, they're giving you the best deals on the internet with their new feature in Game Time Picks. They got you covered. They make sure you're all squared away with the Game Time Picks feature. It basically filters out all the fluff to make sure you get the very best bang for your buck. The very best deals on the app are available with those Game Time Picks features. The other features that I love on the app, you can see your seat view from the app. The lowest prices guaranteed. The Game Time guarantee means if you find another ticket for the same event in the same row, same section for cheaper, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and all-in pricing to make sure you don't get bamboozled with last-minute fees at checkout. The price you see is the price you get. So head over to Game Time today. Use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, download Game Time. Use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, let's look at some of the running backs that the Texans could be after. R.J. Harvey, Damian Martinez, Brashard Smith, Ollie Gordon II, Donovan Edwards, all really intriguing options at the running back spot. All of them looked really good at the Senior Bowl as well. And the thing about this draft, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'll probably say it 20 more times before the start of the NFL draft this season, is there is, just so many good running backs in this class. The amount of good running backs in this class, I think you could honestly draft a starting running back in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of this year's draft. There are so many good guys out there. If I was the Texans, I would wait until the 4th round to draft somebody because there's other needs that the Texans have. You already have Joe Mixon. I know a lot of people want the Texans to get another guy for the backfield, another, thunder to lightning for Joe Mixon. But if I'm the Texans, I'm at most drafting somebody in the 4th round at running back, just because there's so many guys that, I mean, I promise you, 4th, 5th round, you're going to find some great talented running backs to draft even that late in the draft. What say you, though? Should the Texans even consider drafting a running back, or do you think they're set with Joe Mixon, Dameon Pierce, the guys they have already? Maybe they can sign somebody in free agency. Let me know down in the comments section, yes or no, should the Texans take a running back in this year's draft? All right, so we're about to get to the defensive side of the football, but the thing about these practices and the thing about the Senior Bowl, especially the practices, it's catered more towards the offensive players. So I'm just going to roll through some of these top defenders that were there for the Senior Bowl practices this week. I would say the only ones that you can really get a good view at is the defensive linemen, because the one-on-ones against the offensive guys. But even then, it's more catered toward the offense, I would say, in most instances. So, like I said, just going to roll through some of these defenders at the Senior Bowl. First up, edge rushers. And I don't know if either of these guys necessarily make it to the Houston Texans, but both these guys absolutely showed out. Mike Green from Marshall, you probably saw the viral clip of him absolutely running over, destroying the Oregon offensive tackle, Josh Connerly. He has definitely cemented himself as, I think, a first-round prospect in this year's draft. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the teens. And Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, another guy who has looked fantastic in these Senior Bowl drills, has really impressed a lot of people out there. Could be another guy who's raised his draft stock all the way up to maybe that first-round buzz for this year's draft. Let's look at the interior, some interior defensive linemen. Darius Alexander from Toledo, good option. Walter Nolan actually got a little banged up in the middle of the week, missed a little bit of practice, but he's another guy, a great interior defensive lineman if you're looking for somebody. And same with Deion Walker out of Kentucky. All of these guys, great options. I don't know necessarily, maybe Deion Walker, Walter Nolan, round 1 guys, but hopefully I would hope that the Texans could get one of these guys in maybe the round 2. If they're looking for defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, these guys could be some great options. They really showed out at the Senior Bowl. Let's look at the cornerback position now. Maxwell Harrison, Kentucky. Quincy Riley from Louisville. And Azaire Thomas from Florida State. All these guys, they probably got picked on from here to there, right? But if you're talking about the one-on-ones between corners and wide receivers, it's not a realistic situation. How many times are you going to have a wide receiver that has 6 or 7 seconds to run their route and do 5 or 7 different, out fakes, in fakes, out fakes, in fakes on these guys? I think with all that considered, these 3 guys held up really nicely at the Senior Bowl this week. Looking at the safety position now, some seniors that looked pretty good. Billy Bowman Jr. from Oklahoma, Sebastian Castro from Iowa, and Dan Jackson from Georgia. If you're ever able to get a Georgia defender, I would say go for it. Seems like it worked out pretty well for the Philadelphia Eagles. So those Georgia guys know how to defend the football. All these guys standouts this week at the safety position. And finally, at the linebacker position, I did see some reports that Texans brass were talking to Jack Kaiser. We know DeMeco Ryans loves him some linebackers. So these 2 could be some decent options. They obviously drafted Jamal Hill out of Oregon last year. So Jeffrey Bassa, another standout that the Texans could look at if they're going linebacker in this year's draft. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for more draft content all year long, and make sure you're sending me your mock drafts. I want to see the best Texans mocks in my DMs this weekend, and I'll put together a video next week highlighting some of the top Texans fan mock drafts that I received.